What is going on? Welcome back to Financial Journey. So today we're going to talk to you about Palantir. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what really moved Palantir today and whether right now is a good time to buy or not. Before we get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up. And with that, let's get right to it. So starting off, Palantir did go down 1.12%, largely just getting dragged down by the broader market, aka thanks to Powell. Aside from that though, 53.1 million shares were traded, 39.5 is the average. So you did see another day where institutions were absolutely loving Palantir. So a lot of transactions occurring on the secondary market above $100,000. One big one, 1.48 million. Aside from that, majority were buys, and you can tell that based on the bid, the ask, and the selling price. The only thing about Palantir was that it was getting influenced by algorithmic trading, which was just piggybacking off of the broader market, adding a lot of selling pressure. So kind of countered each other out for the most part. Today there was no news associated to Palantir. There was news that came out yesterday that I did bring up already in a pre-market video. Aside from that though, you did have a 144 that just came out roughly an hour ago, which did show Eric, who is a director, is selling as of today 3,026 shares totaling around $83,000. Nothing really to worry about in my opinion. Some people might have issues with this, but people need money for whatever reason, or possibly just locking in profits. 3,000 is small fish, considering even today, like I said, that 53 million shares were traded. 3,000 is just a drop in the bucket. So once again, some people might have issues with this. I do not. So when it comes down to today though, I'm going to go over some data points, what the current Elliott wave technicals are projecting and everything else. Today shorts did increase 428,000 shares. 3.56% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 65.54 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost to borrow average is 0.41%, and then you do see some signs of manipulation. So cost to borrow minimum is negative, meaning there is a broker out there physically paying people to short Palantir. So kind of messed up, and obviously I think I brought this up every single video, but I just have to say it. Definitely do not see Palantir being a squeeze play. I'm just bringing this up more for analysis purposes rather than anything. And one thing to note though, over the last 2 trading days, shorts have started to increase a small amount, insinuating maybe they're kind of piggybacking off the broader market, kind of feeling that maybe Palantir is too high. But over this last greater part of like this last 8 months, shorts have been returning a hell of a lot of shares. So again, something to consider. Going over options activity, today there was $49 million in calls, 8.79 million in puts. So a huge amount of money still getting into Palantir through both common stock and options. Today though, 46% of all the options were bearish, anticipating a slight pull down. But of the call options that were purchased today, there's a consensus for it to be above roughly $28 to $29 by the end of this Friday. So clearly insinuating CPI is going to come in better than anticipated, especially based on what Powell just recently mentioned. And then looking at puts, you do see a consensus for it to be sub $27. So based on the risk versus reward, still a lot more upside. And something to just bring up as well, even though options activity is just merely a sentiment, it doesn't move the stock price, but it's good to look at the volatility, because in a crazy momentum play or just a meme stock or something like that, the volatility is through the roof. So once again, that's always something good to analyze. So with, for the most part, it being in the low 60s, it's definitely piggybacking off of momentum. So it has a lot of momentum FOMO going on right now, but options don't represent that. Options, if anything, kind of point to higher highs coming. So that's something just to be aware of, in my opinion. And then aside from that though, I'll quickly pop over to IBKR. So sorry for the trippy kind of view there. Just it wasn't really working. But aside from all that, based on the Elliott wave technicals, it does have a pivot point of $20. So for as long as Palantir is above that, then it is anticipated to get to that $31 to roughly $35 range. And for those of you that remember my last time I brought this up, it did insinuate that Palantir was going to hit to or get to the $28 range. And lo and behold, here we are. So let me know your thoughts on that, and if you think 35 is realistic, at least in the short term. Like I said, I think Palantir does have a lot of FOMO going on, even though there hasn't been all that much news. Latest article, I think, did the most positive movement for Palantir, and that was from here, a very bullish analyst, which is Daniel Ives. So Wedbush, who has a 54% success rating, did give the highest rating so far on Palantir, and that is $35. That was done 2 months ago, so it'd be really good if he did regurgitate that or possibly raised it. I don't know, given the circumstances. But there was one that did come out yesterday, $25 price target. City, Tyler, who has a 50% success rating, so kind of flipping a coin for that. But this is why I do note that there's a certain level of FOMO kicking in for Palantir, because normally, given the circumstances of where Palantir's at, if a rating came out lower than the current share price, that goes to show that it might be overdone, right? And so logically, any other stock would go down in correspondence to that rating. But Palantir has not given two Fs about kind of lower ratings. Even right here, Brian Moniz, if I'm saying that right, did downgrade Palantir to a $20 price target, but still that didn't really do all that much to the stock price. So I don't know, what's your thoughts on that in the comments below? Do you think that there is some FOMO kicking in? And I actually did get a couple comments. One person was asking what the Morningstar report does show for the fair market value, and it is indicating, just based on the assets, being around $16. So again, something to kind of keep in mind. Moving on from here though, going over this right over here. So with it at $27 and change, it is trading between this R1 and this R2. So 26.43 is going to be that next strong support, and then 27.74 is going to be that next strong resistance / target. And so over the last several trading days, this R1 has not been touched. If anything, it does show some signs of wanting to really move higher. So with the CPI coming out, as well as PPI later part of the week, that could be that X factor causing Palantir to go to higher highs. And so previously I did a video saying the best buy zone would be between these kind of points right here, so this S2 and this S1. But given the circumstances and the FOMO, like, yes, I'm not really one of those individuals that says like, yeah, piggyback off of that and whatever else, but Wall Street over this last year has had a very difficult time in putting a appropriate value on Palantir. So in essence, if Wall Street all of a sudden starts to wake up and says, hey, you know what? Palantir makes things a lot more efficient and helps save costs. Thus, it might be more appealing to a lot more customers, and whatever else might drum up more business, have a higher multiple. And so in essence, it could kind of get to that 30s or possibly even higher, given everything that's happening in the broader market. I'm going to play this video near the tail end. It's roughly 3 minutes, but goes over some of the key highlights with Powell and some things that he does say as negative, which kind of dragged down the broader market, but some things that he did say is positive, insinuating that there is going to be rate cuts. And so right now there is a 71.3% likelihood of a 25 basis point cut for the September 18th meeting. So that's, again, something to keep in mind. On the actual chart itself, it is higher percentile of the boiling band. Stochastic, you do see it at 90, so that is rather overbought. So the first sign of weakness, you could see a pullback associated to that. Still though, if that does happen, that would still be very healthy for the technical at least. So if it does pull back, whether it be to this R1 or even worst case scenario to this pivot, no doubtably there'll be a lot of buyers at that stage, thus causing it to bounce off of that and kind of trend higher. So that would be really good for the stock, because it would kind of reset the technicals and give it a whole new level of momentum, pushing it really higher. Aside from that, number of retail investors we're selling out today, and you can tell that based on the momentum indicator. So all in all, Palantir definitely is a very interesting stock. I gotta give it to them about that. Even when it was at roughly like the $26 range, I was hell-bent on thinking it wasn't going to get above that R1 that I mentioned, and that it was going to kind of trend down, but it literally just burst through there like nothing else. So yeah, I think Palantir is a very interesting stock. I have brought them up time and time again under my other channel, Trending Stocks, a pre-market video, because I talk on where big money is kind of gravitating towards. And big money has been really looking at Palantir, and there's a certain level, like I said, of FOMO and everything else kicking in. So what's your thoughts on Palantir in the comments below? I'm just going to quickly play this couple minute video. Like I said, it goes over a lot of the points that I feel that investors do need to know that Powell did say. So once again, let me know your thoughts on that.
By doing thus, eliminate the federal income tax. First, in the question of what would be the impact of tariff increases on prices, consumers, and the economy?
Thank you, Senator Reid. So I'm going to say that we go very far out of our way not to comment on campaign type information. We just don't do that. We also don't comment on trade policy. We have really specific and important jobs, and we try to stick to those.
Well, I'm glad I allowed you to establish that principle up front, Mr. Chairman. But let me opine a bit. 10% increases in tariffs is going to have an effect on prices in the shop aisle. It's going to increase them because they'll be passed on likely. 60% tariff increases are significant. And in fact, I've been told that to replace the income tax, you would have to raise tariffs across the board 70% to make up for the loss of the income tax, which would, I think, create huge economic problems. I respect your impartiality and your neutrality, but the numbers don't seem to add up to anything that would help the country. Let me switch to something else that might be more within your line of response. You said in your opening statement that the labor markets appear to be in a better balance. And that's one of the key factors to judge whether interest rates can be raised. I must say I'm concerned a bit that we're not on a very faster track to decreasing interest rates from the Fed, and because of the better balance you cite. Could you comment on that, Mr. Chairman?
Sure. So the most recent labor market data do send, to your point, a pretty clear signal that labor market conditions have cooled considerably compared to where they were 2 years ago. This is no longer an overheated economy. This is an economy, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, that is more or less back by most measures to where it was before the pandemic. And that was a strong labor market, but it was not an overheated labor market. So I think the upshot of that really is that we're well aware that we now face two-sided risks and have for some time. But now, the labor market appears to be fully back in balance. We know that if we move too quickly, we risk unnecessarily hampering economic activity and possibly interfering with the ongoing expansion. We know that if we move too slowly, that we may undo the good we've done. Well, actually, it's the other way. If we loosen policy too late or too little, we could hurt economic activity. If we loosen policy too much or too soon, then we could undermine the progress on inflation. So we're very much balancing those two risks, and that's really the essence of what we're thinking about these days.
But the direction seems to be going towards lowering interest rates at some point. We would hope that might be a wish rather than a direction.
I think if you look at the last summary of economic projections, I guess I would say it this way: it doesn't seem likely that the next policy move would be a rate increase. We don't take things like that off the table, but that does not seem the likely direction. The likely direction does seem to be as we make more progress in inflation and as the labor market remains strong, we begin to loosen policy at the right moment.
So yeah, there you have it. You kind of have both things, positive and negative there. So that's what caused a lot of volatility. But once rate cuts do happen, and assuming inflation is kind of curbed and defeated for the most part, then this is where stocks such as Palantir and many other growth stocks are just going to move to higher highs. So let me know your thoughts on Palantir. Give yourself a shout out. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing with Palantir? Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. And with all that said, appreciate all of you watching.